Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I'm here to wrap up all of the books that I read in May. May was a rather sporadic reading month for me. I would read crazy amounts all at once and then not be able to read for a whole couple of days. But overall, I am very pleased with what I did manage to read, so let's dive into the books. First of all, I had a couple of books that I had to read for various projects, like The Secret Garden. I mentioned I joined Ruby Granger's book club on the Fable app, and I thought The Secret Garden was due by the end of June. And I found out on May 29th that it was in fact due by the end of May. So I read this in mostly a day. And I really enjoyed revisiting it. I hadn't read it since I was about 9 years old, but I really enjoyed revisiting it because I remembered absolutely hating Mary as a character when I first read it with my mother. But going back and looking at her now, she is still not pleasant, but from a child development standpoint, I can understand why she becomes who she does. And I loved seeing the transformation. I thought the overall message of how transformative nature can be to children was so powerful, especially in this day and age, and everything that we are seeing and promoting for children to try and dig them out of the digital world and trying to combat the various mental and emotional problems that we're seeing in young people. So it's definitely given me food for thought, and I really enjoyed it, possibly even more than when I was a child myself. Next, I read Passing by Nella Larson for another project that I'm doing, where I am reading 3 books that all center around the same question as passing and are somehow in conversation with it. I really enjoyed this, the original book, and it looks at 2 women who are not in fact sisters. That is a separate book. But they are old school friends in New York City, I believe, all of whom were very light. But our main character has married a black man, is living in a black neighborhood in the 20s. However, she runs into her childhood friend who has married a white man who has no idea that she is in fact black because she passes for white. And he is an incredibly racist man. And it follows their relationship given the push and pull of the very different lives that they are leading. I thought all of the questions that it asked were amazing. I thought the ending, while incredibly sad and poignant, was so powerful at the same time. I really, really loved it, and I loved how Nella Larson managed to pack all of that into such a tiny novella. And I can see why this has had such an amazing comeback recently, because not only is it beautifully written and a wonderful find, but it has proven itself a classic in that we are still asking ourselves the same questions about race, and people are still living very similar struggles. Then I was also given an arc of the new Mimi Matthews book in her Somerset series, or Somersetshire series, which is called An Appointment in Bath, which was just wonderful, but I will have a separate video coming out about it very soon, so I will give you my full thoughts there. Then I managed to finish one audiobook, which was Partners in Crime by Agatha Christie. This is the second book in the Tommy and Tuppence series, and I really enjoyed this, possibly even more than the first book. I'm really loving this series as a whole. I love Tommy and Tuppence individually. I love them as a couple. I love their dynamic when working together and living together. Mild spoiler for the first book, Tommy and Tuppence are now married. And then in this book, a police inspector that they know comes to them with a problem. The police are supposed to have been running this fake detective agency as a front to try and catch Russian operatives. However, the policeman they had in charge of it was discovered to be untrustworthy. So while he is in jail, the inspector asks if Tommy and Tuppence can go in undercover and run this business instead. And so what makes this book fascinating is that there is the overall plot line of them trying to catch these Russian operatives. But most of the book functions like a collection of short stories of them trying to solve all of these cases that people come to the detective agency with. And that made it a lot of fun. It made it very easy to listen to. I could pick it up and put it down between chapters and not worry about losing track of where I was. And it was just a lot of fun, and I can't wait to read the third one now. Then I started to buddy read Leave It to Smith by P.G. Wodehouse with Marissa of Blatantly Bookish, and then we both kind of fell off the buddy reading wagon, but I did manage to finish it, and it was okay. I definitely like Smith as a Woodhouseian creation. If Woodhouseian isn't a word, I think it should be a word. I definitely see a Jeeves and Wooster-esque influence in him. I liked that we got to see more of the inhabitants of Blandings, since these are supposed to be Blandings books. But overall, I just didn't love the plot of this one. I felt like the plot took ages to get going. There was way too much exposition going on. And the actual plot itself ended up happening in the last quarter of the book. It just felt a little unbalanced to me. But it's always a good time exploring a new Wodehouse, so I am glad that I read it. Then for a short pick-me-up read, I picked up Hetty and the Battle of the Books by Anna James, which is a very short and sweet middle grade book. I mean, it is that big. And it is about Hetty, who not only has fallen out with her 3 closest friends, but the school gets the news that the principal wants to close down the library. And Hetty is horrified, and even though she's fallen out with her friends, she knows how important the library is to them and their interests too, so she tries to band them together to pull off a stunt that will stop the library being closed. It was resolved extremely quickly because it is such a short book, and that's just how quickly the plot moves. But I think it's a wonderful message to children, especially in this day and age where we are seeing things like this happening because of budget cuts all over in the UK, in the US where I teach. And the other thing that I loved about it was Hetty's voice. It almost looks like Anna James doesn't know how to write, but that's because she wrote it exactly as Hetty would explain these events to you. She wrote exactly how a 10 or 11-year-old speaks. And that was just wonderful. So this was very heartwarming, very uplifting, especially in the middle of budget talks at my own school. And it definitely gave me a little bit of sanity. Then I read The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden. This arrived way later than I thought it would, which is why I haven't gotten around to it till this point. I ordered the UK edition thinking that that would come out sooner than the US edition, and discovered how mistaken I was. But no matter, it is here, and I have finally read it, and I really enjoyed it. I did appreciate how much it was in conversation with Jane Eyre, but also took a very feminist perspective on it and had almost a Tenant of Wildfell Hall approach, and yet it felt completely fresh and completely new. It was really, really well done, a very solid read, and I look forward to seeing what else Katie writes in the future. And then finally, I finished this technically in June, but since I finished it on Friday night, I really wanted to tell you all about it now. And that was The Firebird by Susanna Kearsley. This is the second book in her Scottish or Slains series. The first one being The Winter Sea, which you can just see over there. And this was really good. I didn't expect it to go the way that it did, but it was really wonderful and very immersive, as are all of Susanna Kearsley's books. This one is in conversation with The Shadowy Horses, which I read around this time last year. We have a recurring character, but I will also say you don't need to have read that one to appreciate this one. You definitely need to have read The Winter Sea, however, otherwise there are major spoilers for how that one works out. So this one follows Nicola at first, who is an antiques expert, specifically in Russian antiques, I believe. However, she also has a gift that I can only explain in terms of The Diviners by Libba Bray, where if she touches an object, she can see pieces of its history. And this woman comes to the agency that she works for with this Firebird sculpture and wants to know its provenance. She knows that it was handed down to one of her relatives, but she doesn't know more than that. And Nicola doesn't entirely trust herself to divine all of this object's history herself. So she goes up to Scotland to find her old flame, Rob, who is similarly gifted, but she feels even more gifted than she is. And the two of them set out to work together. I did not expect how heavy the Russian connection would be given the plot of the first book, but that's the beauty of Susanna Kearsley's plots, is that they sometimes highlight elements of history that you never hear about, like how much the Russian court was involved with attempts to try and put who would have been the English James III back on the throne, who was Bonnie Prince Charlie's father. I loved revisiting characters and places from the Winter Sea. I loved our main characters. The only complaint that I had was that the political maneuverings of the historical sections, where we go back and see Anna, this woman's ancestor who was given the Firebird, all of the political maneuverings of the expatriated English and Scots Jacobites at the Russian court were very hard to follow. I really was never sure exactly what their plans were or how this was going to achieve their ultimate goal. Beyond that, though, it was very enjoyable, and I'm now really looking forward to reading book 3. So those are the books that I read in May. Let me know down below if you have further thoughts or questions about any of them. Let me know down below if you read a particularly wonderful book this month that you think I would enjoy. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye, everyone.